My name is Lacaba. I am a survivor of Category 5 Typhoon in the Philippines, and I am an entrepreneur.
Hi, all. It's Zoe here. Thanks for hanging out with me again today and joining the Surviving with Zoe podcast, a conversation where amazing, inspirational survivors from all walks of life share their personal stories and expert advocates educate you, our audience, in order to break stigmas and taboos regarding mental health and trauma. Kind of like free therapy and permission to always give yourself grace and compassion as we are ultimately all just surviving every day. Before we dive in, we would like to add a trigger warning for anyone that is vulnerable to particular issues. Please pause if needed and check out our timestamps in our description if you need to skip ahead. Lastly, if you could please hit the subscribe button and follow us on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and TikTok. We would really appreciate it since we are a new pod. We need all the love we can get. And of course, we want to amplify our guests' voices. At 18, Leanne survived Category 5 Typhoon Haiyan. When she realized that she was about to drown in her childhood home, she decided to detach from expectations of her family, which was to become a lawyer and work abroad to focus on building her remote career. Leanne is a serial entrepreneur, international keynote speaker, author, and certified AI consultant. Her entrepreneurial journey began at 15 as a ghostwriter. She chose to pursue a remote career and published her first books. By 20, she became a CEO, and at 23, co-founded 2XU with a mission to create remote opportunities for 1 million Filipinos and help 10,000 entrepreneurs grow their companies. Named one of the top 15 most influential Filipinos on LinkedIn 2024 and 2025 and Businesswoman of the Year finalist 2023, Leanne is a global speaker on entrepreneurship, AI delegation, and the future of remote work. She also hosts the Scale You podcast and is the author of Scale You. Welcome to Surviving with Zoe, Leanne.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Zoe.
Okay, so Leanne, I'm really excited to talk to you. Your story is very unique. So why don't you just start in your own words, telling us your journey from the beginning?
Okay, so it was I'll just share this little funny tidbit. It was funny. It's like you had literally, I think like 2 days ago on TikTok, it was those one of those filters like describe me. It was like mine was kind, caring, and trauma dumping. So be ready for trauma dumping. Something that a lot of people don't realize is where the city I grew up in, it's Tacloban City. We literally face the Pacific Ocean. Like there's no other barrier. It's right
Yeah.
to like just the Pacific Ocean. So every single year, almost every typhoon that goes through the Philippines stops by there. Like usually
Yeah.
it's a port of entry. So for us at 18, I knew how to take care of things. So I
Hmm.
know how to do the groceries. I know what to put aside. I know what to do in the mornings of a typhoon. I basically had training basically growing up on how to be able to like handle typhoons. So much so that both my parents were actually not home that weekend. My
Oh my
dad
gosh.
my dad works overseas. We would only see him twice a year. That was one of the main ways, of course, that a Filipino can earn like an actual dollar amount
Mhm.
to send home to the Philippines. And my mom at that time had was working for the government, and she had like training, like leadership training, if I remember right. And the typhoon happened November 8th, 2013. It was a Friday. Yeah, it was a Friday. And I remember it was three of my siblings. Um, I'm the oldest of four. It was my how old was my grandma at that time? I think she was like 67. She was like old. Old. And then we had our person with a disability aunt who lives with my grandma, my Lola. And at the time I remember all of this is I remember still very vividly in my head. Like I remember step by step
Mhm.
where it was, what was happening. And I remember I woke up at like 5 o'clock to the alarm. I was gonna make breakfast because it was just us. So I went down. I was preparing a few of the groceries just in case that we had to, power would go out. We knew that. We knew that the uh signal for the phone will also go out. So I was like, okay, I'll plan out like when to like alert my parents and like just let them know
Mm.
how we're doing. And I remember I was cooking chicken that day. That's how vivid it is in my
Yeah.
head. I
That's
cooked
like trauma makes you remember everything in detail. Yeah.
just like a snapshot picture, right? I
Mm.
remember I was cooking the rice on one stove, was cooking the chicken on the other stove. I checked in on my grandma, and my aunt, and I said like, "Hey, you know, like let's go have breakfast. It's starting to get really windy. It was really dark. It was dark, but you know that the sun was out, kind of dark. And I was like, everyone else is saying that it's going to be scary. Days before, we were told it was a storm surge. We had no idea what a
Okay.
storm surge were at that time. I believe since
Mm.
then now people know what a storm surge is because of that typhoon. Um, and I remember I was starting to put down the plates and like we were going to start to eat. And then my sister, well, at that time she would have been, I think she would have been 9 actually. Um, she said, "Oh, there's water." I'm like, "Water?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, is something leaking? Is like, what does that mean? Like, what does water mean?" And then I looked down. Basically, the kitchen was like a little bit of higher floor, and then I looked down to where she was, which is living room, which was like a little bit of a gap. And I saw water rising, and I'm like, I've never seen that before. And then I look outside and I see water slowly rising. We had this beautiful glass windows, but I see the water rising in those glass windows.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, oh, and like I then started like literally gathering the herd. I was like grabbing. We had a tub of basically where I prepared the groceries. I put all of the groceries back into the tub. I then grabbed the pot of rice, still warm from the stove, and I was
Mm.
telling it, "Let's go up, let's go up. We don't know like if the water's gonna keep rising." My brother um, was grabbed our big like furniture wooden day bed and put it against the door because we could see the water coming through the front of our door.
Mhm.
Um, and we were starting to go up to the second floor. So the way that our
Mhm.
house was is we had the living room and then we had the stairs basically going up a little bit to the side. So I started
Yeah.
herding them going to go up.
Yeah.
And then finally, my brother, I could see the water rising all the way to almost my height, right outside the window. And I was like,
Oh
I'm
my
scared,
God.
nervous. And my grandmother is only, so I'm 4'11". My grandmother at that time, because of the
Yeah.
Asian shrinking basically. She was already like I think 4'9", 4'8". So she was shorter, and then the water for me was already up to my chest. So I can imagine what it was like for my grandma. And then by the time that the force of the waters wasn't, my brother couldn't push it back anymore because I think my brother at the time would have been 16. Um, the water started rushing in like all of a sudden, and I remember again vividly my grandma almost falling over, and we had to like lift her up because of how fast the water was rising. And I was like, okay, everyone go, get up, get up, get up. And I was like, I don't know why in my head I was like, oh, the matches. So I actually went back to the kitchen, grabbed the matches and the lamp. So I had a pot of rice on one hand, I had the lamp on my other hand, and I had the matchbox in my mouth. And I remember the water kept rising, rising all the way up to my neck. And at one point, I panicked because my mom's furniture was floating towards me. There was like vases floating this way, and I'm like, oh. And then I always describe it as like, people always say like right before you die, there's that split second of like your life flashes before your eye.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
18 wasn't really anything, so I think that my brain flashed forward. Um,
Yeah.
uh, exactly what was what you said earlier, where my mom wanted me to become a lawyer. We had a plan of me working abroad, basically following a little bit of my dad's path, so then I could
Mhm.
send my home, blah blah blah. I saw all of that and I hated it. I still remember that. I still remember it a little bit in my chest. Like, I was like, I don't want that. And I made a promise to myself at that very moment of if I survive this, I'm going to make a life out of myself. And that was basically the heroic, adrenaline moment. I spit out the matchbox out of my mouth, screamed my brother's name. My brother sees how I was like just trying to float by.
Yeah.
I haul him the two things I was holding on to. I don't know until this day, but I managed to flip myself up to the other side, up to the stairs. And we basically spent, I think, 4 to 5 hours just listening because can't really do anything. We could hear how the wind was basically blowing like an airplane, like jet turbine. We could hear people screaming outside, asking for help, and of course we couldn't really do anything. We could see our neighbors climbing their rooftops because the water has now risen fully to the first
Yeah.
floor of the house. And we could hear my mom's vases like crashing in the background. We were like, well, we can't do anything about that now. We went through all four mysteries of the rosary because my grandmother was very religious, so we just blew through all of the mysteries of the rosaries. And then I remember we said, okay, let's change to bright colors, so in case that we need to ask for help, at least they can see us.
Yeah.
So we
That's
changed to
smart.
yeah, all of the brightest colors we could find. Um, and my grandmother sadly had to watch the house that they've had for as old as my mom was, which I think at that point was like 40 years, kind of just start crumbling because the water was like washing in and out. So it was like
Hmm.
stuff outside, all of the windows were already broken. Um, and basically by the time that the water started to subside, I did have this flash of like, um, oh my God, what if this is it? What if the water keeps rising and then we have nowhere to go because we only had up till the second floor. And thankfully the water started subsiding, and then later on my uncles came around. They were like, are you guys okay? We know that this was worse here basically because our house after
Hmm.
the after the storm surge, now we saw that our house was the main street. It was our neighbor's house, which was now flattened, and then the water. And it wasn't that clear before because we had our neighbor's house like we it was their walls were really high, we couldn't really see past, but now it was then the water. We were like, ah, that's why the water went up so fast. So like we um went through all of that. That was Friday. My mom was supposed to come back Saturday after her training.
Hmm.
It was we've seen people looting, we've seen people like different things basically throughout that Friday and then the Saturday.
Hmm.
And then in the evening, um we were about to go to bed. I remember it was 9 p.m. And then I hear from outside our house my mom screaming my name. And then she was like,
Hmm.
just like, Leanne. And when all of us were like, how the heck did mom like get home? um,
Yeah.
we know that they were like dead bodies. We knew that there were debris
Mhm.
everywhere. And it was one of those things where my mom's story is like so badass and so heroic where she found like a way to be able to get on the very first flight to our hometown, walked through dead bodies basically from the airport to our house, which is a 15-minute car ride. It took her 2 hours to get home. Um, not even sure if all of her kids and her mom would be alive, and her sister would be alive. She just wanted, she was just
Oh
determined to
my gosh.
and she was able to get home. Um, it was very surreal next couple of days where then the next week my dad was able to get a flight home as well because then he was just of course inconsolable, and he was basically got like an emergency leave, so we got to a point where all of us were all together and then like just trying to figure out getting out of that situation where no one would have thought that would be a possible thing, so
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I can't even imagine that. It honestly feels like you're describing like a movie or something. And, just when you were talking about how your mum came home and there were dead bodies, like, and debris, like, I can't even imagine the headspace that she would have been in. And also, like, you as well and your family trapped at this house, like you're grieving like your family home, like your grandma, and also probably worrying about your parents, like are they okay, like are they gonna like think that we're not okay. I found it really interesting, Leanne, how when you kind of had that like flash forward to your future, that you know you have this, are you the oldest sibling?
Mhm. Oldest,
Okay, yeah.
granddaughter and daughter,
Okay,
grandchild.
yeah,
Yeah.
double whammy. So
Yeah.
I found it interesting that not only in real daily life, you had this huge responsibility to become a lawyer and move overseas like your dad and, send money back. But in an emergency, you also stepped into that role. I mean, like, just like, isn't it crazy in like moments of trauma how quickly you react? And when you're like watching a show or something, you're like, I would never react that quickly. But it's like all you like can focus on is like moving forward, and you kind of risk your life for your family, like, so that's just very admirable, and I'm sure your siblings look up to you, and just how you took care of your grandma is really profound as well, um, and handled like the panic, because like seeing that water rise, I just can't imagine the fear. Um, but I want to talk to you more about the promise that you made to yourself that you were going to, change your life. Because honestly, like whether you're religious or spiritual, like that is like a moment of divine intervention. And like you said, you were only 18. So, like, when you made that promise to yourself, did you have any idea of what you were going to do after this, or was it just like, I'm going to improve myself in some sort of way?
In my head, like I had the goal of working for New York Times. That was actually one of the things. Like I have scrapbooks. I love scrapbooking. So I have like a vision board scrapbook, and I found it actually the other day, where I had like I cut out like a little piece of paper that said New York Times. I'm like, I'll write for New York Times one day.
Yeah.
I had like different things that I wanted to pursue, but I didn't really know, of course, as an 18-year-old, what that would look like. So I had bits and pieces of what I wanted to pursue. A big part of it was just leaning into my writing, because my writing ultimately was an escape. Like right now, I'm speaking very fluently. I was never this way when I was 18. I could write faster than I speak. And nowadays people can't catch up when I'm talking. But like I remember that was the drive. That was the thing that I wanted to do, was to pursue writing to see
Mhm.
wherever that would have taken me.
Yeah. So you just had kind of like an idea. I love that because it's like that's where it starts.
Mm.
Like you knew your passion, obviously, growing up in ghostwriting. Let me ask you, and I love that you're like a manifester. Like I think that's amazing. The vision boards, I'm the same way. Let me ask you, how did you deal with like the grief of, your hometown being affected, like the streets that you grew up on and memories, and I'm sure you knew people that passed away, and your family home that you grew up in. How did you and your family deal with that grief of losing your family home?
A lot of it is, I know bits and pieces like I got really repressed. Um, I remember just being angry. I think that was the emotion that I kept feeling. At that time I didn't recognize it as angry, because I,
Mhm.
being the eldest grandkid and daughter, um I was, people pleaser through and through. So I didn't know how to be
Mhm.
angry. I didn't know what angry felt like.
Yeah.
Like, later on in therapy, I found out I was angry. But I remember that anger of like, because basically after that, after the typhoon, we were able to move to basically, where I've lived now for like the last 11 years. We moved to that city for a little bit because one of my dad's cousins was like, you guys just lost everything, move here for a little bit until you guys get back. We moved back 3 months later. I had to start college, basically the second semester in
Yeah.
college. And for 5 months, we didn't have electricity. Like the typhoon happened in November.
Wow.
No, actually 6 months. The electricity came back like mid-May. So
Mhm.
for those 5 months of like kind of just wandering through the city that I love, and like going still to especially going back to school, it was so surreal
Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
for months we would find dead bodies still. For months we would smell. For months we
Mhm.
would see people's houses. I'm not sure if you've ever seen any like footage and everything, but we had like
Mhm.
five big ships, like vessel
Mhm.
ships, parked into people's houses. And one of
Mhm.
those houses was one of my mom's closest friends. And I
Mhm.
remember my mom's grief over him, and I could
Mhm.
feel it. They say, of course, he's her friend, but like I remember that they did a lot of like remembrance. They did a lot. They
Mhm.
couldn't really have a funeral for him because they couldn't find his body. So like
Mhm.
there were like different parts and pieces of like that reality that is still heartbreaking to me to this day.
Mhm.
Just like
Yeah.
knowing so many stories, so many things, and like
Yeah.
of course since then there's been so many like published books about it. One of my funny enough, one of my side gigs was I was a translator for a journalist who went to the city, and then he hired me to translate from our language basically to English. So then it was kind of more amplified of like me hearing other
Mhm.
people's stories and like what they had to
Yeah.
go through. Some of them came from one part of the island, and then the water washed them to the other side of the island.
Mm.
Bits and stories of like that, and like until this day, like I'll meet someone um, here, even like in different countries that I've been to, and I'll ask them like, "Oh, what was your experience here?" And we're like, that would be something that then I bring that piece with me of their story
Yeah.
wherever I go. So it's all about basically the after of that was a lot of anger and also grief, but it was mostly just like sadness. We're just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
never gonna be the same again.
Absolutely. I can't even imagine, moving away from your hometown. You're like, I'm homesick and, things change while you're away. So I can't even imagine just being there while everything has like collapsed, like basically. And people like your mom's friend have passed away, and the anger almost sounds like a protection for yourself, like, because when we get angry, it's like we're protecting ourselves and standing up for ourselves. Um, and I found it interesting that you were like a people pleaser, because I don't get that vibe from you now.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing that it pushed you to fluently talk English, because your English is amazing. Um, but I'm interested about the grief again. Did you ever feel like you had survivor's guilt because um, your whole family survived? And, you know, it's kind of a miracle because, I'm sure, that a lot of people lost their loved ones. Was that anything that ever crossed your mind? And if it did, how did you deal with it?
I don't think I had survivor's guilt, mostly because I know what I went through.
Hmm.
Like I remember coming across like the term of like um I actually no, I remember now where I read this quote. It's from Harry Potter, where Dumbledore says, pity people who are alive because they still have to go through. For the people who are gone, they're gone.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember kind of that I think I had a little bit of that mindset of like, no, I didn't just luck into this. I like literally had to survive through this. And I think a part of that as well was um my mom taught me this prayer when I was really, really young, and I until this day I still carry it with me. Where, um, basically, try to remember like word per word what it is, but essentially, give me the strength to let go of the things I can't control, and
Yeah.
that's always kind of been. Even though I was control freak in my early 20s, I've always tried to kind of emulate that of just like letting things go because I could not control that. That
Yeah.
wasn't me. Um, Basically. So I think that's
Yeah.
kind of not really eased the survivor's guilt. Because I know going to therapy, the thing that caused my PTSD the worst was
Mhm.
the fear. This is a little bit therapy speak, but like the fear that if my anything happened to my siblings, that my mom would kill me. That was kind of the higher fear than actually
So your
dying.
fear like drove you to survive almost. That's amazing. And I love that that was a coping mechanism as well throughout your grief, was to give yourself empathy and grace, and almost like a pat on the back of like, wow, I actually did that. Like that's insane. I'm proud of myself. My siblings and grandma are alive, and my mom is coming home and she's not gonna be angry at the oldest sibling.
We hold on to anything at that point.
Yeah, and I'm sure she is so proud of you. And I did want to ask just a little bit about the typhoon. For anyone that doesn't know what a typhoon is, can you just explain it a little bit? And how long did it last for? Like, were there any like after events of it? Like, did it continue, or was it just like that once off?
Funny is I actually researched the difference between a typhoon, a hurricane, and a tornado afterwards because I was like, what are like the differences? So typically for a typhoon, it's essentially anything that's um trying to remember if this is correct. Hot coming into cold, no, cold is coming into hot. So like the similar to
Mhm.
how our hurricane basically starts evolving, and it gets
Mhm.
the because we were facing the Pacific Ocean, the
Mhm.
strength of it, the wind, basically just kept
Mhm.
getting stronger and stronger the closer it came to land. And for the whole typhoon, we started feeling it, like I said, like around 5 a.m. But it actually
Mhm.
didn't make landfall until like 7 a.m. And I remember at 7 a.m., because they call it the eye of the storm, it was a little bit more chill, I guess, during that time,
Yeah.
and then it started
Yeah.
intensifying again like 30 minutes later. And it didn't, it felt like it didn't actually go away until like 11 a.m. So for like
Mhm.
6 hours, we were kind of in that in between of just like, oh, a little bit of an eye in the storm, and then just the intense thing
Yeah.
right afterwards.
So, did you ever have like an instinct or a gut feeling that something bad might happen? Because I've heard that some people get that like random feeling, or were you just like, I don't know what's going on because you're 18 and you're cooking rice and chicken for everyone?
Well, like I said, like we've gone through typhoons multiple times. Like
Mhm.
it is a norm. Like we know how
Yeah.
usually how long the electricity is out. We know how to stock up on food. So in my head, I think I was just in like, okay, this is just what I'm dealing with today. This is just
Yeah.
get people through this, whatever
Yeah.
it looks like, because we never really guess until it makes landfall. You could make
Yeah.
presumptions of like, oh, it'll be this strong, it'll be this, but until it actually makes landfall, we never know what it would actually look like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I cannot even imagine going through that experience. How is your family now? And where do you guys live? Like, have you settled down in the place where your uncle lives? Like, and have you guys got a new house? And like, let me know what the status is now.
Well, the on the house, we basically just
Mm,
still live in the same place. We got it. Not it didn't the house itself that my family lived in wasn't damaged as much as my grandmother's house because it was a little bit
mhm,
older, and we lived right next to each other. Literally, our like we had side doors going to each other's house. Our
mhm,
house, we like I said, the windows were damaged. Well, actually damaged. It was wrecked. We didn't actually have windows, so now we rebuilt that back up. We had like a
mhm,
lot of different damages on different parts, but because our house were mostly like just brick, mostly. We didn't have too much damage there. We just kind of repaired a lot of it. For my grandma's house, the one basically that my mom grew up in, they actually had to like demolish all of it because the damage was too basic and predictable if something else happened because of
yeah.
the water like really went into it. Um, so my aunt and basically my uncles rebuilt my grandmother her own little house afterwards because the old one had
Aw.
like second floors, had like four different bedrooms for the different kids because she had six kids, and like and then her downstairs area, so they actually had to rebuild her whole house. But other than that, the aftermath of it was then kind of 6 months later I did leave. At 18 years old,
Yeah.
that's kind of like I was
Mhm.
like, do I want to finish college? And I moved to another city.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I really want to talk about that next stage of your life, because it seems like this horrible life-changing disaster happened, but it also kind of was a catalyst for a big change in your life. I just
sure.
want to ask one more question because I know you travel a lot for work. When you go back to your hometown, how do you feel when you're like walking around? Like, does it still kind of linger that feeling of what happened, or have you been able to move forward in some way? Does it for your PTSD as well? Like, and feel free to talk about PTSD and how that affected you.
First couple of years, I remember because then I moved to the other city. For the first couple of years, I remember it was so stifling being home.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Part of it was, the Asian guilt of me not finishing college. But the other side of it is like whenever I would go out, I remember just sad. I was just like, this is not, the city that I grew up in. This is not anymore my city. And I forgot how long it took. I think it took like 5 actual years for me to stop having panic attacks on the day of the typhoon.
Wow.
Um, and no, it took, yeah, about 5 years. And I remember around the time that I started kind of calming down from it, was when I was like, okay, no, this is just a different city now. This is just, and my head started to
Mhm.
wrap around like, yeah, no, it's not that I really fully outgrown my city. It was just like, no, this is just a different city that you get to travel to
Yeah.
and like see your family. And I'm like, okay. So something shifted around the 5 year mark.
Mhm.
Like, it's not as harsh, I guess.
Yeah. And you said you went to therapy. So was
Mhm.
that like the main source of help for your PTSD?
Therapy came to me, I think it was also actually around 2018, 2018, 2019, where I met this, I tried to go to therapy different times. Every single time it just got shoved a couple of like pills to take. And I met essentially the therapist that I kept going to, on a women's event, and she was talking about how she would, you know, take her patients through the process of therapy. And I'm like, you know what? Hers is the closer one to how I imagine it would be. And her first words to me when we started therapy, like, if you're taking anything, stop taking anything right now. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking anything, so I'm already there. So, but yeah, that was her name's Samira. I love her. But I basically saw her for like 2 years, to essentially like process a lot of things in adulthood that I was still holding on to as a kid too. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I I think that talk therapy and medication usually go together. So just doing the medication isn't the best route, you know. So I'm
Mhm.
not surprised you were like, okay, I want to do the talk therapy now. And what tools did she teach you to get over your panic attacks or at least manage them?
So of course, the cognitive behavior therapy, that was the main thing that
Mhm.
actually shifted a lot on my head. Like,
Yeah.
she was trying to do different things, but the CBT really like shifted a lot of like, oh, okay, this is
Hmm.
how I can process to
Yeah.
do. One A memorable session that I will always have with her was, because of course, like, I would describe like my panic attacks or my anxiety
Hmm.
attacks to her. And I was like, my heart would go racing. Like, I feel like I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass. And we actually, because her office was on the second floor, we ran up and down the stairs a couple times to get my heart going. She's like, "Do you feel like you're gonna panic right now?" I'm like, "You know what? I'm okay. Okay, I can start managing the symptoms as they happen." But that was kind of, like I said, like, the a lot of, because her beliefs align with mine. Like, she also believed in like astrology. She believed in tarot
Oh,
cards,
cool.
reading, and
Yeah.
that aligned with me. I was like, okay, I don't feel like I am like not going to be heard by this person.
Yeah.
And later on, like, after I went through therapy, I referred like so many people to her, and like, she then became just, a Facebook friend who knows all of my secrets in life. Like, that was kind of I think if she didn't come during that crucial time in my life, even though that was like 5 years later after the typhoon, I wouldn't have been able to process a lot of the things
Yeah.
in my life afterwards too.
Yeah,
So
and who knows where you would be now, like, you know, without her help. And it sounds like what she taught you is like grounding techniques, like being in the
Mhm.
present, like I'm not back on that day, which I find it very significant that on that same day that you would get the panic attacks, like that's
I
just
the
so
first couple
hard.
times it happened, it didn't even sink in. I would just like wake
Mhm.
up and I'd be like, why do I feel like leaping off the building today. And then I would remember like, oh,
Yeah.
it's that day. Okay, that's why.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I've heard of that with people who like they have like someone close to them pass away and then they relive it on their death anniversary. So oh, that's so scary and I'm glad that you're through it and it sounds like she was a huge role model for you and you're able to relate to her.
Mhm.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I'm so excited to talk to you about your career and how, you know, um, just your purpose, it sounds like, that you really stepped into so bravely after this. Let's talk about moving to another city because we talked a little bit offline and I've moved a million times. And people don't talk about it, how traumatic it can be. You're mourning your hometown, and you are also trying to acclimate to this new place that is so foreign. So tell me about that traumatic experience, but also tell me about the exciting parts about how you were getting started on Leanne's career.
So to another city, that was a little bit before I decided to not like um pursue college basically anymore because I was already going to my third year. And we had internships basically where we had to render like a couple of hours towards like the profession that we wanted to go. And at that time, of course, I was taking communication arts. So it's like, oh, I want to be a journalist. Again, New York Times. So I applied through different like places that I kind of knew that I wanted to work with. One of them was the city that we lived in for like 3 months after the typhoon. I just applied, I got in, and I was like, oh, new different city. And like I was so scared I remember being so scared to tell my mom that I, in my head, made up this. Not really made up the story, made sure I had a backup one in case my mom said no to this one. And it ended up where when I moved at 18, I moved to this, how much would be that? $25 a month, um, room. It wasn't even like, it didn't even have its own bathroom. It was smaller than my current bathroom, actually. It was just literally a single bed, a little like cabinet, and then that was it. And I had to go outside of my room, outside of the house, to go back into the house to go into the bathroom. Um, but at the same time, like I was going through that, I was also that was the very first time that I was away from home because as the sheltered eldest daughter, I've never been to sleepover until that point of my life. Uh, and so there was like so much change. At that time I was also like in a relationship with someone I've been with since like high school. So there was like so many things compiling on top of the other. Got a pixie cut because that's what you do when you're about to go through a lot of changes. Uh, and I remember sobbing to sleep for like almost 2 months straight. I remember um, feeling like I was just going to be all alone for the rest of my life, even despite. I would go home at least once a month, right? Because my mom's like very strict. You know, have to go home every. If you're going to be there for a
Mhm.
while, go home every single month. And then I remember the time I told my mom, like, I don't think I'm gonna go back to school yet. I said, maybe I'll go back next year. We already all know where that's going. And um, then the other magical thing is then before I moved to the city, I was like, I want to make sure I never ask my mom for any money because like I know as long as I keep asking for money, I'll feel this guilt. I feel I'll have
Mhm.
to go home without any other choice. Um, so I got this job online for a book publishing company.
Mhm.
And they were a startup company. They were barely a year old, I think, at that point. And for me, it was a dream. I would to this day, I still would read like 100 books a year. And at that point, I would gobble up any book that was in front of me. So it was a dream job to be an editor for a book publishing company. And
Yeah.
it was also then a lifeline of like me being paid to be a grammar Nazi of just reading through all of these books, all of these other people's stories as well, and of course, it would inspire the writer in me to write my own stories as well. Um, so that was kind of those first couple of months of just me trying to figure out
Mhm.
like what I want to do, and then I got my very first panic attack over a rain.
Mhm.
And I remember it because I've never had it before. I've never had a full blown like that panic attacks. Like I had anxiety attacks in school,
Mhm.
but I never had like a like the frozen kind of fear. And I
Yeah.
remember we were in our um temporary makeshift office at work, and it started raining, and I was like, why am I feeling like I want to just lie down on the floor? And then I was just starting to panic a little bit. And my boss at that time noticed it and was like, are you okay? And I'm like, I think I'm not okay with the rain like pouring hard right now. I was like, okay, well, my girlfriend and I can take you home. I'm like, okay, thank you. So like they took me home. They saw my $25 a month apartment. They were like, you know what? We're moving to this three-bedroom place in the next month. We don't. No one is living on the other room. Do you want to live there? I'm like, yeah. Do you have to pay anything? No, it'll be rent free. It'll be for employees who like don't really have a place to go. And I'm like, sure. Ended up living with them for like 9 years.
Oh my gosh.
Afterwards. But that's a whole other like fun chapter. In fact, they're actually flying here to Vietnam tomorrow because we
Oh
just
my
can't step
gosh.
away. They've become I jokingly, lovingly call them my white family because they're all from Seattle.
Yeah.
Um, but that basically was kind of the start of it. It was like I started doing the editing work, and then I became the manager of the editors, and then became
Hmm.
management of like marketing as well, all the
Hmm.
way to like wanting to really learn how to start and run a business, um,
Yeah.
all the way to like to the point where I was 20 years old, I was kind of named as the next CEO for the company because
Hmm.
I think I worked
Yeah.
80 to 100 hours a week, and I have a time tracker to
Yeah.
prove basically kind of thing.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's insane. I mean, they sound like incredible people that, again, like you seem to have had a lot of people kind of come into your life at the right time that really kind of like not just saved you, because I don't want to say that because I feel like you saved yourself, but supported you. Like as you were growing into this huge purpose. And I'm so sorry about that panic attack with the rain and moving to a new city. I can relate to crying like every night. Like, and your first relationship when you're young, and it's just so hard to be away from everything you know. And then put on top of that, that your hometown is not really there anymore. So you're mourning that. I do want to, learn a little bit more about um, as you're changing this career that you were meant to follow to become a lawyer like your father, who was going overseas from the Philippines, which is very normal for Filipinos to earn a dollar wage. How did that feel? Because what I'm hearing is that you really had to put yourself first because you've looked after your family your whole life. You're the eldest daughter, eldest granddaughter. You have this huge weight on your shoulders to send money back home. And here you are moving in a totally different direction than your mum wanted you to move. How did you find the courage to choose yourself and really move forward into a life of purpose?
So my dad wasn't a lawyer. He worked for essentially oil tankers, which is funny in this climate right now.
Got it.
Um,
Okay.
where he would be basically he was um he was actually just here in Vietnam. We had his birthday was last week, so I flew him here. Um, he would describe it like for months at a time there would just be the boat and then the sea. That was like for
Got
months
it.
at a time that was his job.
Yeah.
And with my mom, she had the lawyer goal because that was something that she was pursuing when she had me.
Got it.
I was
Okay.
planned, but like because they were already like married and like, oh, let's have a kid, and then uh her career also shifted. So she did the normal thing that parents would do, which is just passing down your dream to someone else. With my mom, uh, like I said, for the first, I would say 5 years, it was very tense, and intense. Like every single time I would go home, I would feel like I was gonna get trapped, that I would never be able to go back to the city that I fell in love with, and like not anymore in the
Yep.
city that I don't really
Yep.
want to spend too much time in. And I didn't plan for it, but I did it in stages. Like I would say, "Oh, I will skip this semester," and like, "Oh, actually, my career is now doing really well. I'm gonna skip to the next semester. They kept just kind of extending of like when I should go back to school. Um, Up to the point where I did had to tell my mom that I'm not gonna go back to school anymore, and she promptly then blocked me on Facebook for 6 months, and I skipping my own birthday. So that was a fun. I think that was my 21st or 22nd birthday. So that was fun.
Oh,
Um, but then she did end up coming around just because then um I just worked really, really hard and really smart, and like I'm her daughter, so I knew how to like do, and I would always point it out like I'm your kid, like you raised me to be this way. And um
good strategy.
right? And it was sadly she passed away in 2021, but I remember when we found out that she, because it was only me and her in the hospital. It was during the pandemic when she found out she had stage 4 cancer, which meant that I was the only one allowed in the room. And I remember the next day after we found out her cancer diagnosis, she said, "I've always been great because like not every Asian kid hears this." Where she said, "Leanne, I'm proud of you," and I'm like, "What? It's happening now?" And I'm like, that was kind of a really nice full circle for a moment. Very sad, but at the same time, like I know I have that for the rest of my life of just like my mom saying
Yeah.
that to me in the hospital bed at like 5 a.m. Right after she found out that very scary prognosis. So yeah.
I'm first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your mom, and thank you for sharing that with us. I just, yeah, I'm just so moved that she lived long enough to almost um, approve of your career. And it sounds like she wanted you to be better than her. Like that was the ultimate goal. Like it's not just the career path, it's just like as immigrant parents, like I know as well, they just want you to do better than them. And that's why they push you, which is an interesting way of showing love, but you know, come to accept it. Um, and yeah, I also think that how you chose yourself is like through actions rather than words. So you kind of like put your head down and did the work and then let those actions like speak for themselves. And I'm sure your mom, when she saw you like speaking on stage and running your own business, like that really inspired her and was like, okay, I can see it from Leanne's perspective and I had something to do with it. So that is just such a beautiful story, and yeah, I'm just really touched by that. Um, let's talk a little about the ugly side of becoming an entrepreneur, the struggles that you have to face, the late nights. You said you worked, was it 80-hour weeks? Yeah, and being an introvert as well, you know, tied into that. Um, how did you manage going down that path and building something that, you know, maybe people didn't really understand, but you knew that it could go far yourself?
So it really starts with the part where um Tom, this is the name of my now business partner, my boss at that time, really was the type of person where his mission in life was to lift other people up. He wanted to build, he said that because he selfishly wanted to build an empire, he could be very selfless with other people. That was one of the things where like he was the same age as my mom, but he's a year older than my mom. So in my head, like he was, I call him my business dad, from Rich Dad Poor Dad from like Robert Kiyosaki. That was kind of like, oh, he's my business dad. He's the dad who like gives me like advice on like how to do business, how to do life, at the same time. And I remember at 19, like I said, the startup was fairly new, but then it was like, hey, we're starting like 3 other businesses. The current managers that we have right now are going to be taking over like, or are going to take over like the startup for this. We want someone to um take over the publishing business and like be trained up basically on how to run business. And at that time at 19, I was just saying yes to everything. That's kind of I always said that if I had to write a book about my life, my title would be Yes and. So because I was like, yes I'll figure it out. So I raised my hand. I was like, I want to learn business. I want something that basically, if I die, I would be. Oh, that was the thing that I said to myself. Like, I wanted to. I'm going to change my life to the point where I would live a life worth writing about. I can't believe I forgot that part. Like that flash forward. It's like if I survive this, I will live a life worth writing about. And I remember when I raised my hand and I was like, oh, wait, I want to do this. Um, then it was like months of studying. It was months of learning
Mhm.
from other people. Almost every day waking up to a TED talk that I'm watching. But it is one of the things where as a business owner, like it's so freaking lonely. Like when I wanted to start 2XU, at that point I was running the book publishing business for like 3 years. It was already doing good. It was doing well without me because I had mastered systems building to the point where I could take
Mhm.
off 2 to 3 weeks and books will still keep getting published. Authors will still keep coming in. Um, and I told Tom, like, hey, I want to start my own business. And he said, instead of you leaving, why not I co-found it with you? That way we already have like the US system set up. You set up the Philippine systems. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. I remember until this day, it still is there of like being an entrepreneur with this lens, with the kind of life that I've lived. Not everyone understands what that is. And especially when I started my business so young. Um, and as a woman also on Women's Month, no one would always really
Yep.
take me seriously. I remember the
Yep.
first couple of calls I did for 2XU, I would need to have Tom there, or else they will just believe that I'm Tom's virtual assistant, or worse,
Yeah.
the time when
Yeah.
they would think I was Tom's girlfriend, and I'm like, no, I'm not. He's my a lot of these things that I had to keep like breaking out of, and I
Mhm.
felt like I had to keep kind of just having to keep my head up a lot of the time,
Yeah.
to stop myself from like drowning.
Oh my gosh, what a great like answer. And it sounds like, Tom being like a fill-in dad was like a really positive thing for you, but how did you feel like growing up not having your dad there, and how do you feel now being so successful that you can give back to like the younger versions of Leanne and help them not go through the same thing?
Well, with my dad, it was funny because like I didn't really see any problem with it, mostly because it was my normal. Like I grew up with it. Like my
Yeah.
dad, I was born in 1995. My dad started going overseas in 1990. So even before I was born, before my parents were married, that was already my dad's life. So of course, by the time
Hmm.
that they had me, then my brother, my two other sisters, that was a norm. Like I would see my dad once or twice a year. He would be gone for months at a time. When he did go home, it might be 2 weeks, it might be a month. We'd be lucky if we got a month with him, before he
Hmm.
would be called up back again. And I didn't really see that as kind of too bad because my mom was amazing. She was basically a single parent throughout all of that. Just like raising us, making sure that we were disciplined, making sure that we grew up the way that we have grown up basically the last couple of years. And it was only when my dad lost his job because they lost like a something of this the ship. You know how we never really know what our parents are doing.
Hmm.
He lost his job, and wasn't. That was also around the time that my mom started getting sick. Um, I didn't appreciate it until that point where I was the one who was in another city and my dad was home for most of the time. And I remember um, as much as I do want to spend a lot of time with my dad, like I'm I'm in this other city. I don't really want to be home. And when my um mom then got diagnosed with cancer, like he my dad always steps up anyway, but he stepped up more of like taking care of her, taking her chemotherapy, like staying up with her, being always in the hospital room wherever she needed him to be. And I remember having the thought of like if he still had to be working overseas, who would do that? Like if like who of us kids basically would have the strength and the heart to be able to see my mom go through that part of life, and that
Yeah.
would we have would been my dad. And when I started creating content online, in 2019 about like how to start working online, how to start working from home. I started it from the point of view where my sisters, who were the same age that I was when I started working, were asking me all these questions. Like, how do you set up a resume? How do you set up an application letter? And I'm like, you know what? Let me start like creating videos out of this, so then I can just send it to you.
Yeah.
And then I started posting them online, and then I started
Yeah.
posting them on YouTube, and then the flip side of then other people ask me like, how can I hire online? And I'm like, at that point, I
Yeah.
didn't have my business yet. And then they were like, "Hey, I love what you teach. Can you do it for me?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Let me figure out how to start
Yeah.
whole like agency where we hire managed assistants." So it started this snowball effect, but it did come from that my sisters asking me that question, and then in the back of my head of like, "Oh, this is how I create basically more opportunities where for me I get to work anywhere in the world." Um, my sisters can also do that. So then for us, basically for this generation, we don't have to really work overseas. Like we can choose
Yeah.
to overseas, but it's not anymore a
Yeah.
part. We don't have a choice. Um, I appreciate it a little bit more. Like
Mhm.
my love for what I do is always goes back to that of like the part where my
Yeah.
dad um is able to have this life because he did work so hard at the very beginning, where he
Yeah.
made sure that
Yeah.
he could afford to have four kids basically, and be able to
Yeah.
um take care of my mom so well. And like now he's built himself up a second career or technically third career already at home. But then he gets to see his kids. He gets to
Yeah.
um, be the dad that I know he always wanted to be, but then he's able to actually fulfill it and actually be there for us.
Oh, I love that. I'm so moved by that because I know how hard it is, like traveling and living overseas, and you don't get to see your parents or your family, and everyone's getting older, and you just feel like you miss out on so much. But then you have these like just serendipitous like moments where you get to surprise them, and like you are giving back so much to your whole family. So it must be so fulfilling to see that and to see him being able to relax a little bit and be the dad that he didn't get to be growing up. Leanne, um, is there anything else regarding like your career and businesses that I haven't touched on that you'd like to tell our audience about?
I nerded out about a lot of life, so thank you for letting me just trauma dump again. Because I do like finding circles in my life. Like, oh, that's how that turned out. I think we covered most of it. Like we covered like essentially the
Yeah.
beginnings of my business to XU. Um, there's of course just like the AI of it all, of like
Mhm.
diving into talk about systems and being a nerd essentially as well.
I know you mentioned living a life worth writing about, which is just such a beautiful quote. You're definitely a writer. Um, when you think about where you started the typhoon, all the struggles that you have, um, why do you think that you're a survivor now?
There's a time where when my mom was really really bad, and her just more sadness and trauma dumping, where her liver was starting to fail, and we were all like, we knew where it was going. That I kept telling my family, like, one step at a time. Let's just take this one step at a time. That's it. And I have that mentality of
Mm.
anytime that something is happening, anytime something horrible is happening, I would say, wait, what's the next step? What's the next step? And in all of my YouTube videos, at the very end, I always say small steps matter. Like even if you can take the
Mm.
smallest step forward,
Yeah.
that's you moving. That's not you standing still.
Yeah.
You're moving some way or form forward. And for me, being a survivor is being able to take that next step forward, whatever that looks
Hmm.
like.
Hmm.
Because it's not that you're walking away from something; you're moving towards something, and it's always better. So it's that thought, it's that mindset of like one step at a time, one step at a time.
Well, you are such an inspiring woman, and I know I've gotten a lot out of this podcast. Where can our guests find you if they would like to learn more or reach out?
I am everywhere. I have an amazing assistant who makes sure that I seem like I'm everywhere. So I'm on YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere you can find me. My mom blessed me with a very unique name where it's easy to find on Google, which is Liam Lacaba, and you can find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leanne, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.